Hello and welcome to Luminate's Year-End Music Report 2025. I am Jaime Marconette, Vice President, Music Insights and Industry Relations at Luminate, and thank you for joining us today. We can't wait to share these insights with you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lexi Chicles. I'm a senior manager on the Insights team here at Luminate. I'm also based in New York, and I have a couple housekeeping items before we dive into the webinar. So this session will be recorded, so you can share it with whoever you want to share it with after. There is also a physical report that we'll be pulling our data from today. There's an interactive version that you can find on our website, luminatedata.com, and there's also a downloadable PDF version, so again, you can share it with whoever you want to share it with. And finally, we aren't covering everything in this webinar, and there's a lot more data in the report, so please go check that out to see everything we have to offer.
Yeah, thanks, Lexi. And just to double click on that, there's so much more in the report, so please see the interactive version, download the PDF as well. You know, this is a really interesting report coming through this year because we are shifting in the industry from, you know, just the standard growth metrics that we've always seen to really this more complex system of entertainment intelligence, and we can't wait to share these insights with you. So first off, I'd like to introduce Luminate. Totally understand that there might be some of you who have not joined one of our webinars in the past and always want to take a moment at the top of our webinars to just introduce Luminate to you. We are the essential entertainment data company, and we have the most comprehensive view of the music consumption globally, as well as a film and TV division and an insights division as well that we'll get into too. But on the screen here, you see the massive number of data points that we process daily. There are 106,000 ISRCs coming through on a daily basis, and we are able to provide a look into the activity on each one of those ISRCs within 48 hours in 60 countries. Through our UI. So it's pretty massive scale of data. And this data is brought to you by over 500 daily sources. We have relationships with the major DSPs to provide their data to us directly. That's in the US as well as DSPs in other countries. We are the provider of the data for the Billboard charts, and that's how we accomplish that as well. So just a massive scale. But one of the things that I always find most interesting when I'm looking at these numbers is the stories behind those numbers. And that's what we're going to dive into today.
So here's just a quick rundown of what we're going to be going through in the report today. Our analysis is structured around 5 core pillars that we think really define the year. We're going to be covering consumption metrics, some premium pricing strategies, the transmedia landscape, which is my favorite, an ever-evolving fandom, and finally the AI frontier.
Excellent. So overall, globally, 5 trillion audio streams this year. That was the first time we've reached that number, and that is 9.6% growth over the previous year. Now, at the mid-year, we were tracking global growth at 10.3%. So we did see a little bit of a softening through the second half of the year at the global level. That is common, and we're actually going to talk a little bit about what happened in the US because it was a little different. And we are seeing that our ex-US growth is 11.6%. So now, more mature Western markets, the US and other territories that have been streaming for a long time, the growth has obviously slowed down because there's not as high a ceiling anymore. And so we are seeing that the ex-US markets and emerging markets are really the ones that are responsible for growing the overall on-demand audio streaming numbers that we see now. When we take a look at the US, there are a few interesting things that I want to call out on this slide. So we're looking at the major core metrics of the US right here. On-demand audio streaming growth is 4.6%. That is actually the exact same that it was at the mid-year point. But our US total album consumption, which is that top number, the 4.8%, that is actually higher than what it was at the mid-year. At the mid-year, that number was 3.9%. So we've already said that audio streaming is steady with the mid-year, but that number's higher, which means a massive influx of physical and album sales overall in the second half of the year really drove that up. And to drive that point home, you see that the physical album sales for the year are 6.6% higher than they were last year. In our mid-year report, that number was negative 3.2%. So really, when we look at our total album consumption, that physical number, especially in the back half of the year, is really what drove it. Obviously, there was the Taylor Swift, The Life of a Showgirl release that had massive numbers, one of just 2 albums this year to reach over 5 million equivalent units. The other one was Morgan Wallen. Quick fact for anybody, that's the first time in the consumption era. We define that as 2014 when really streaming services came online. That's the first time in the consumption era that we had 2 albums reach over 5 million units in the US, which is a pretty big accomplishment there. And really that drove a lot of that album activity that we're seeing at the top level.
2 very different artists too, in
Yeah,
different genres and everything.
Yeah, very, very different. And it's really wild when you think about, yes, there have been some albums that have hit 5 million, but not 2 of them in the same year in the US.
Yeah.
And also, very exciting, we have interactive song streams for the first time. So you're seeing that here. This is a new data metric for us. It is in-game, in-video game engagement and song streaming. We have a new partnership that was launched this year with Epic Games. And this is a form of engagement that we'll now be tracking. Our first data came in this year, so we don't have historical trending, but we did include this here. And there is some interactive game data throughout the report as well that we're very excited to share with you, and we will be trending this in the future. So before we go on, let's pause a moment to look at a break in trend that we saw here in the US. Now, in this graph, what we're looking at is we're looking at the amount of industry growth, right? And we've talked before about how growth is slowing, right? We're still seeing higher volumes, but growth is slowing. And really, this chart shows that over year, how these percentage growth numbers over the previous year have shrunk. More net streams, less overall growth percentage. The interesting thing that we saw, though, that was this year is that in Q3 we saw an acceleration, and you can actually see that in Q3 2025 on the US side, where that bar is actually higher than Q2. We had not seen that before, and this is really due to Pop Girl Spring, which was in Q2 2024. And if you'll recall, there were just a ton of massive albums, right? Sabrina Carpenter,
Chappell Roan, Charlie XCX,
Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish,
Sabrina Carpenter.
Yeah, Sabrina Carpenter, enough for 2. So yeah, definitely a lot of growth there. And we had to get on the other side of that. So when we were comparing this year, especially through the first half of the year, you were comparing against that. And then in Q3 of this year, we also saw a lot of pop albums start to break through. Again, I think actually Sabrina Carpenter. So this caused an acceleration. Now, which is also interesting is that we didn't see that on the international side because they didn't have to bounce back from Pop Girl Spring in quite the same way. Also, K-Pop Demon Hunters was very, very key to driving this overall growth. But the interesting thing was that we saw a Q3 acceleration in the US and that international followed its typical trend through the rest of the year because it did not have to bounce back in the same way.
So in this next section, we're going to be looking at some vital stats and KPIs from 2025 that may shape today's music industry.
Yeah, thanks, Lexi. And, one of the things I want to call out is that there is a lot more here in our downloadable version, in our PDF as well. That's where you'll find the track streaming pyramid and other things that you've come to expect. So we're just kind of going through some of the main points here, but really encourage you to go look at that as well. Top 10 genres remain the same. R&B hip-hop is the market leader, as it has been. 1 in 4 on-demand audio streams is R&B hip-hop. But, when we look at a streaming pie and we consider that as 100%, if something's growing, then something is being taken away, right? And so as we see rock growing this year, Latin, Christian gospel, all of these really growing, they have to pull away. And so the share of R&B hip-hop has dropped as it has in recent years. And then also, we did see that Christian gospel, while it had moved up a spot at our mid-year report, K-pop really helped drive world music and kind of reclaimed its role there at the 7th spot.
So another thing that helped K-pop and world music rise again was the fact that both Twice and Stray Kids had really big albums and songs that hit that Billboard 200.
Yeah, for sure. It was pretty impressive, right? I mean, and obviously K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yes, and K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yeah. All right, so let's just talk quickly about some of our biggest growth genres this year. Rock led the way, followed by Christian gospel and Latin music. In terms of the overall growth genres, we just kind of talked about share on the previous slide. Rock, couple of vital stats for rock. While it grew the most in the U.S., we're also finding that in ex-U.S. territories in terms of volume, it's growing the most in Asia. And then on Christian gospel has been growing the last couple of years, but it did accelerate again this year, and we're seeing that a younger streaming forward Christian gospel fan is emerging and really, really driving that genre.
And with Latin, we're also seeing that, the power of a single artist cannot be denied or understated. Bad Bunny has really helped to drive the Latin genre, and while Latin music has been growing for the last 5 years, it's the amount of growth is pretty amazing. It went from 58% in 2020 to 70% in the last year.
For premium streams. Yeah, which is pretty impressive when you think about that, right? It's it used to be known as a more ad-supported genre, and now it's changing over, which is pretty impressive for the genre as well. Okay, so a couple of notes here. In terms of release age streaming, we did see that 43% of all U.S. streams this year were from tracks in the last 5 years, so 21 through 25. That's down from about 49.6% of all streams in the U.S. coming from those years, and that does highlight a trend that is in the report as well about how the current music tracks that are 18 months or newer, that volume was down a bit this year. We've covered that in our mid-year report. It's covered in this report as well, but this tracks with that too.
Something else we're also seeing with rock songs, especially catalog rock songs, is the rise of short-form video and how that really helps to drive listenership in those songs. A really good example of that is with the Google Dolls, the song Iris. It was included in Deadpool and Wolverine, but it got picked up on short form, and it catapulted it to, I think, number 47 in the U.S., number 22 on the charts globally.
Yeah,
super high.
Yeah, super high. Let's just think about that for a second, right? Goo Goo Dolls' Iris was the 22 most streamed songs globally in terms of on-demand audio. That's wild, and it does follow the trend that we've seen with other rock songs, right?
Yeah, as the audience of short-form videos expands, gets a little older, gets a little younger, it's become really mainstream, and so that's how a song can really take off.
Yeah, definitely, and Fleetwood Mac's Dreams is still number 30 in the U.S.
Yeah, it's a great example.
4 or 5 years after that trend?
The Cranberry Juice video.
Yeah, the Cranberry Juice video, exactly. So in terms of physical, we are also seeing that vinyl continued to grow. It is growth sales. This was the 19th consecutive year, and it grew 8.6% to reach 47.9 million sales this year. 4 in 10 vinyl records are sold at indie record stores, and we're also continuing to see that direct-to-consumer sales, other known as D2C, are becoming a larger share of the physical sales channels, and those are sales that occur at either artist or label websites.
Yeah, we've been seeing this trend really pick up, and we think it's kind of the easiest way to become a superfan. It's the first step in, you're paying for your streaming services, but it's a low entry point to really showing your fandom for a specific artist to buy a piece of vinyl and, to buy a piece of physical in general.
Yeah, especially from the artist or the label store.
Yeah. So something else we've seen in terms of vinyl purchasing changes is how it's become more diverse in the last year. We've seen a rise in Black, Asian, and Hispanic consumers, which now represent 46% of all vinyl purchasers, which is great, and that's up 18% since last year. So who else is buying vinyl? Young people as a whole. Both Gen Z and millennials collectively make up nearly 80% of all vinyl purchasers, and 19% of all millennials have purchased a piece of vinyl. So those numbers are pretty high, and it's a 43% bump from 2024 as well. So it's becoming, purchasing vinyl is here, and people are really showing their fandom that way and want to have a piece of their artist's success.
I think that's a really insightful and excellent point that you just made, but then also on the previous slide about how this could potentially be the past streaming. It's sort of that first Superfan step. It's the first step that people take.
Yeah, I do. And, you can show your fandom in a lot of different ways. You can show it by following them on social media, by going to concerts, but, some of that is very expensive and hard to do. It's much easier to show your fandom through buying a piece of vinyl art.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Lexi.
So in the next section, we're going to be looking at premium pricing. With subscriber growth slowing in mature markets, the focus is really shifting to maximize average revenue per user. And we've seen this successful in both Spotify and Amazon Music's successful raise in prices in 2025. And the fact that the market tolerated these hikes is really telling because it's the economic engine of the industry. Yeah. So they make up paid streamers make up around 42% of the general population, but contribute 76% to all music spend.
That's a wild number. In terms of premium streams, what is interesting is that nearly 50% of global premium streams come from just 4 markets: U.S., Mexico, Brazil, and Germany. Mexico and Brazil, both top 10 IFPI markets in terms of revenue. Mexico entered that region, that tier. This year as well. We also see that Japan is number 5. And an interesting call out for Japan is that Japan has been successfully converting some of their Gen Z ad-supported streamers to premium, as we're seeing in some of our consumer research and our audience data, which is phenomenal and really kind of points the way in the Asian market in terms of doing that. And then one other note, India is just a massive opportunity as well. Overall, India has a higher share of ad-supported streamings, but if they were to just convert just 5% more of ad-supported to premium, it would skyrocket them into the top 10 for premium streams. We are seeing that in general, Latin America is leading the way in terms of the conversion to premium streams of its consumers. We just saw Mexico and Brazil on the previous slide. Obviously, that's represented here. And then you also see U.S., Canada, and Australia, New Zealand on the far right. That's to be expected. These are mature markets. The ceiling is not as high to convert to premium than in the past.
So we're also seeing some recovery in paid usage this year, specifically with Spotify. They've seen some growth, and YouTube has gradually increased their premium market penetration as well. However, Apple Music and Amazon Music usage rates have been slightly declining since their 2022-2023 peaks.
Okay, and this is what the consumers are telling us, right?
Yeah, this is from consumer data.
Okay, excellent. Well, interesting to see that subscriber growth in general has started to rebound a bit.
Yeah. So in this next section, we're going to be looking at transmedia, which is my favorite section. It's been a buzzword in 2025, and it refers to the convergence of content across music, gaming, film, TV, to really maximize revenue and engagement. An example of what we're seeing right now is with the new show, Heated Rivalry. We've seen the song, All the Things We Said by Tattoo. It's featured in the show twice, both as the original and a remix, and already the show's been out for a little while, but in the U.S. on HBO, it's been out for like 2 weeks, and we're already seeing a surge. Yeah. And I just love when this kind of impact happens. I think it's intentional, coordinated magic.
Oh, yeah. Good description there. So let's talk about music documentaries, right? And this is one of the things that we've been tracking now. We're tracking this via our streaming viewership model, where we start to put minutes watched to video on-demand programs. Becoming Led Zeppelin. This was number 1 at the mid-year, is still number 1 now. This has driven the Led Zeppelin catalog to its highest streaming ever, and also a sustained streaming. I've talked to a lot of people, and oftentimes the goal is not just the spike in streaming, but it's the sustained. And Led Zeppelin has sustained a 16% growth over the past year.
And that's the magic.
Yeah, that's the magic.
What happens.
That's the magic happening.
Yeah.
And then also the Selena documentary, I have to call that out. This was released in mid-November and skyrocketed to number 2 in the overall rankings here for music documentaries, which is just totally impressive. Now let's talk about the theater and music going to the movies. We saw that Taylor Swift's The Official Release Party of a Showgirl claimed $34 million at the U.S. box office in just one weekend. Overall, $50 million in box office for Taylor in that release, and really kind of underscores a trend that we're seeing in music films. Depeche Mode, David Gilmour, and others released films to theaters this year. Obviously, K-pop Demon Hunters. Could you talk a little bit about why this makes sense?
Yeah, so interestingly, there's a trend that the people who listen to music in multiple languages or are premium streamers or are superfans are all more likely to go to the theater. So it really highlights that the line between music and film and TV or film is really not that different. The entertainment activities are linked, and the fans are valuable in both categories.
Yeah, excellent. These are highly engaged fans, right?
They are. And in this next example, with Ariana Grande, this is another really symbiotic relationship for both the movie and Ariana Grande. Yeah. So Ariana Grande being in Wicked, drove a lot of attention and success to Wicked, but also Ariana Grande being in Wicked drove a lot of attention to her catalog portfolio, which we saw, a lot of growth in over the months of its success. With this collaboration with Ariana Grande and Wicked, there's also a lot of opportunity for brands to kind of get in on the action when it comes to this type of relationship. So a specific one that we've highlighted or found in our data is that Ariana Grande fans are more likely to travel. And so booking an airline ticket, staying at a hotel, these things are elevated for her fans. So it could be a really cool opportunity for a brand to get in on it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I also see the stat here that they're more likely to tune in. So maybe that potentially drives them to the theaters as well to see Ariana on the big screen. And before we move on, I just wanted to take one more second to talk about transmedia. We're gonna talk about video games here on the next slide too. But overall, it's a very interesting concept. It's sort of the leveraging of all of these different platforms, right? You've got your music IP and the vision of the artist, but now you're leveraging all these different media touch points. We're going to talk about gaming here in a second to really drive forward the brand of the artist and the artist vision. And in our multimedia world, there are a lot of touch points that can be leveraged here. Oh, yeah. So it's a very interesting concept and what all of these things bring to drive the artist forward. Let's talk about video games now, because it's not just the new artists, right? Daft Punk. Daft Punk had the Daft Punk experience that launched on Fortnite. And this is interactive streams. I referenced this at the top of our discussion today in our webinar. But drove a massive jump globally for the band at around 44%, 45% in terms of the on-demand audio streaming there for the band, for the group. And, so it's not just the new artists that are, transmedia, but these rich historical legacy artists can also find a niche as well and really engage a new audience. And you'll also see that we have a pie chart showing where the interactive streams came from. Yeah. Most in the U.S., but then in Mexico as well. So really, really interesting there.
I think these opportunities are also great to introduce a new and different audience to an amazing group. Yeah. And so we've seen the success in that a couple times, but this is a great example. So in this next section, we're going to be looking at evolving fandom. And now more than ever, global DSPs make music, more accessible and different types of music more accessible to everybody. And there's a lot of interest in music in different languages, even if you don't speak that language. So that interest has also been higher, maybe now more than ever.
Yeah, excellent. And let's talk a little bit about some of the stats that are here. So here we have our global export power rankings. This is a metric that we debuted in our year-end report, I believe it was last year, where it looks at the country's ability to export the highest number of artists to the highest number of countries at the highest rankings. So it's a tiered system, it's weighted, there's a full methodology behind it that you can find. But what we found is that though the top 10 countries have remained the same, Brazil has moved up in the rankings this year, which is very, very interesting, especially when you start to consider how local the Brazil market is in terms of streaming Brazilian artists, and now they're starting to expand as well. And then also we've included the top genres there that each country is exporting. One thing that jumped out to me is how much EDM Europe is exporting to the rest of the world. I thought that was really good insight there. And then when we look at the top exporting country from each region, though not in the top 10, Nigeria did move up. It's the biggest exporter out of Africa. It rose from number 23 in 2024 to number 19 in 2025. And this is Burna Boy and Ira Star really connecting with global audiences. So great to see there as Nigeria jumps 4 spots.
So superfans, when we're talking about importing music and global expansion of music, superfans really shine in this section. They are not just local spenders, but they're also key importers of new music, and their fandom really transcends just listening. They become interested in the culture, the food, the products, and just everything that's associated to the artist. That really opens the doors to a lot of newness coming in. And when it comes to international artists, Japanese superfans are 35% more likely to listen. And when it comes to Indian superfans, they are 23% more likely to listen. So they're very open, which is not that it's surprising, but they have so much content from within their own country that it's pretty special that they're also ingesting so much international content.
Yeah, great point there. Japan and India are historically very, very local streaming markets, right? I think each one of them streams around 75% or higher local artists. Yeah. However, Japan is also a revenue-driving market, a top 10 IFPI market. So if you're looking to get in there, these super fans are the ones that will bring in content from other countries and then share it around and champion the artist. So, so much of the superfan conversation is always about like the local impact, and obviously that is incredibly important and very, very valuable. But this idea of them also being key to the music import is fascinating. Well, and you really can't have a conversation this year without talking about AI artists, right? What we saw at the mid-year was that this was the first time which AI artists really started to generate a lot of headlines. There was the Velvet Sundown. And then in our report at the mid-year, we looked at Eventus as well and the streaming that was occurring there. But I feel like this was definitely the time, especially in the second half this year, where we saw artists like Zanyo Monet or the country AI artists Breaking Rust and Kane Walker start to really make headlines and then also top a couple of charts as well. Breaking Rust and Kane Walker top the digital country song sales chart. But really, in terms of overall streaming, Zanyo Monet was the one that had the most streams that we've seen and that we looked at in our group of AI artists. That artist reached the 97th percentile. And also, with Zanyo Monet, it was a major news headline because the AI artist creator received a reported $3 million advance.
That's a pretty big bet on the future.
That's a pretty big bet on the future. And, we talk about this in our report, but proponents would argue, hey, well, my AI artist can be anywhere in the world at once, multiple activations, multiple activities, never gets tired, never has to sleep, and so you can see,
there's an appeal.
There's a bet on the future there and what that could potentially mean, because if you create an audience, then you're going to have opportunities. So that's what the proponents would tell you. And, I feel like this was sort of the first time that we saw these AI artists start to really make some headlines there.
So when it comes to our consumption data, we've also tried to keep a pulse on people's perceptions and opinions around AI, specifically in music. So despite some of that relative commercial success, consumer reticence definitely still remains. Besides those 65 plus, actually 18 to 24-year-olds are the most kind of concerned about AI in music, which I think is interesting from, a younger group. Yep. However, 36% of millennials express comfort with AI in music and lyrics, marking them as the generation that's the most open to the new frontier.
Interesting. Well, there's a lot to figure out here and a lot of conversation about this, obviously. But what we saw in terms of the consumption was this was sort of the time when it started to get a little bit of a stronger foothold with some of those, a select number of these artists, at least with making news headlines as well. Well, that does bring us to the end of our presentation for today, but I really do want to encourage you to go and download the PDF and also check out the interactive version. There is a lot more in there to look through and to think about. Thanks so much for joining us, and Lexi, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. If you guys have any questions, you can email us at sales@luminatedata.com, and you can go to luminatedata.com as well just to check out the report and check out any of our other products. But yeah, this was great. Thanks.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you for joining.